you got to assume that the sheer numbers of people that watched your documentary, some of them have to be liberal, and that might at least expose them to other ideas that they're getting suppressed from in other places.
Yeah, I mean, we hope so. And there certainly have been plenty of people who are not dyed-in-the-wool right-wing Republicans who've seen the movie and appreciated it. Which, by the way, I'm supposed to mention, if you go to whatiswoman.com, we just decided we're going to make the first 15 minutes of it free. So so you can kind of get, you can go check it out. You can see 15 minutes of the film and decide if it's...
It'll whet your outrage.
Yeah. Decide if it's something you want to subscribe to watch. I think hopefully you will, though.
So Daily Wire as an enterprise started because of the suppression of conservative ideas online. Is that why they decided to have this network?
I don't think it was just that. I mean, originally it started as basically a conservative kind of news site, which is a political site, which there's still a lot of that. But one thing that we talk about the Daily Wire is wanting to build an actual cultural institution on the right, which doesn't exist right now. You find that all over on the left, right? They've got a bunch of them, but there really isn't that on the right. The only thing that could make a case for itself will be Fox News, but I think even for Fox News, the reach, I mean, they reach a lot of people, but it's Fox News and it's seen a certain way. And so its ability to impact the culture, I think, is somewhat limited because of that. But with the Daily Wire, the desire is to build an actual culture institution that can reach into all these different areas of culture and make an impact that way. So,
with fictional films as well.
With fictional films, I mean, the Daily What Is a Woman is it's a documentary. It obviously has a point of view. I'm not out there in the film preaching that point of view, but I as the person behind the film, I had a point of view that I wanted to get across. A lot of the other films that the Daily Wire has made, though, especially the fictional films, there isn't like a political point of view. It's just it's supposed to simply be entertainment without the political stuff, which I think is a lot of people miss that back when you could find those kinds of movies, which are increasingly hard to find.
Do you have friends that are liberals?
I do, not as many as I used to have. They kind of drop off as time goes on.
Have you had disputes with any of your people that used to be liberal friends?
They generally they won't come back around and say anything to me. They'll just I realize, I haven't talked to that guy in a year. Growing up especially, like I said, I grew up in a liberal area, so I had plenty of friends that were liberal. We get into
Where'd you grow up?
Baltimore, not the city, but outside of Baltimore. And we would have knockdown, drag out type arguments and that sort of thing, which was allowed back then. Not as much now, though, I guess.
And so when you did grow up with these kind of people, did you ever imagine that there'd be this kind of a divide in this country? Because when I was a kid, I had, there was plenty of people that were conservative and liberal. Even my parents had friends that were conservative. My parents were liberal. Now you don't see a lot of reasonable discussion. Like, people seem to have shored off into their own camps.
Yeah, I actually think people say that, we're headed for a civil war and all that. And I don't think that we are headed for a civil war, because the situation in our country is very different now than it was in 1860 in a lot of ways. And in one way is that the divide is not as explicitly geographical. I mean, there is a geographical component to it, but you can't just split it down the middle, right? Everything's mingled together. So I don't know if we have we really have the atmosphere for a real civil war. But I do think that our country is probably more divided now than it was in the Civil War, because there's this vast chasm that separates one side from the other. There are no shared beliefs. There are no shared values at all, at least from the two ends of the political spectrum. It's not even a spectrum anymore, because there is this severing down the middle of it.
Do you think that's by design?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's by design. It makes it impossible to have a conversation. That's one of the reasons why political debates are so fruitless often, is because in order to have a constructive conversation with someone, or even a constructive debate, you have to have some shared frame of reference that you're both referring back to And if you don't have that, then what are you talking about? And that's one of the reasons why, I can sit around in a room with other conservatives and have really passionate debates that feel productive because we agree on the fundamental stuff, but now we're just arguing about some of the details, some of the things that you build on top of the foundation. But when you don't even share the foundation, then there's nowhere to go. You reach this impasse, like I did in What Is a Woman. You eventually come back to, well, what is truth? How do we know if there's a truth? Well, once the conversation devolves into that, there's nowhere to go from there.
Well, when you get away from gender, like what are the other gigantic divides that you see that are impassable?
All the big pillar issues, life, the life issue, gender, marriage,